in the immune system, all the different types of white blood cells that we have all work together when we get invaded by a pathogen. So if I have a pathogen that invades the body, that the body recognizes as foreign and non-self, then the white blood cells are going to start to attack it to try and get rid of any of the foreign pathogens as well as the cells that it's infected. So a pathogen has antigens all the way around the outside that the body can recognize. So when the body encounters these antigens, the B lymphocytes that are in the body, or the B cells, they get selected for where they will match. So B lymphocytes have DNA sections in them, and those genes code for antibodies which match these antigens on them. So we select the correct B lymphocyte that will then match these foreign antigens, and that's called clonal selection. So if your body's never recognized something before, clonal selection will take a little bit longer. And if you have encountered a pathogen before, then clonal selection is a little bit quicker. So once we've selected the correct one, this correct white blood cell is now the one that's going to match. And what's going to happen is we're going to have a process called clonal expansion. It means these cells are going to divide over and over again by mitosis, and they're going to make a whole lot of the same white blood cell. Some of them are going to be turned into what we call memory cells, and some of them are going to be turned into plasma cells. So now, a plasma cell is responsible for making your antibodies. So inside your white blood cell, you manufacture these antibodies, which have these Y shapes, and in the ends is the variable region that will stick and match perfectly to the antigen. So inside the cell, it's going to make all these antibodies and it's going to release them. Some of them are going to be displayed on the outside of the white blood cell, and some of them are going to be loose. And what's going to be happening is these antibodies are going to stick to your pathogen antigens perfectly. So as we get more and more, all of those antibodies are going to start to stick, and they're going to hold all of those pathogens in place while they're there perfectly. So while that happens and they're sticking all of those things together, they are alerting the other white blood cells, which you have in your body, called macrophages and neutrophils. And those macrophages and neutrophils are going to come along, and while the antibodies are holding them in place, they engulf them. And when they engulf them, what happens is they break them down with any hydrolytic enzymes and things that are inside them. And when they break them down, they can have what we call antigen display or antigen presentation. So that white blood cell is then going to start to take all those antigens from inside and display them on the outside. So you're going to start to have all of those antigens being displayed, and that can then trigger the second type of blood cell. So we have our antibodies being made from our white blood cells, sticking to our pathogen. The macrophage and the neutrophil come on in and they break it down. So they go all the way there and they engulf. And the macrophages specifically present the antigens on the outside. And when they do that, they stimulate the T cells. So the T cells are the same as the B cells, but they don't quite have an antibody structure, but they do have something similar, which will match in the same way, and it will then select the correct clone. So for clonal selection of the T cell that has been stimulated by that white blood cell with that antigens on the outside to come in and match. So if that white blood cell has that antigen on the outside, it's going to match perfectly with that T cell, and we're going to have clonal expansion, meaning we're going to divide by mitosis and make lots and lots and lots of them. Now, once we've made a whole lot of the T cells, they're going to start to differentiate, and you're going to get helper T cells, which will secrete something called cytokines. So cytokines is a hormone, and that stimulates more plasma cells and more what we call killer T cells. So it just means that we're going to take these and we're going to make more and more and more of them, so that as those pathogens keep dividing, we can keep sticking them and keep killing them. And then the killer T cells, they come along and they attach to any cell that has been infected and has started to display those antigens on the outside. And then it sticks to them and it secretes a toxin, usually hydrogen peroxide, but there can be lots of other toxins. And when it secretes it into the cell, it kills the cell as well as the pathogen that has been invading inside that cell. So that's why they're called killer T cells, because they kill those cells and anything that's invaded them. So those helper T cells with those cytokines, they start making a whole lot more of those plasma cells and those killer T cells, and those then go everywhere in the body to try and get rid of anything that is foreign or considered foreign. But in order to do that, they start crossing your blood vessels and all those things to get to where they need to go for those cells. And when that happens, for example, in the lungs, when it crosses those capillaries to get through into the lungs, it starts to break open and release things like plasma and break all the elastin in the lungs, which can then cause a lot of damage. So if the cytokines start to get out of control, they could trigger what's called an autoimmune response, where the body has a little bit of trouble identifying what's foreign and what's not, and that can cause quite a lot of damage. But usually we have quite a constrained response and we get rid of anything that is affecting our body as foreign, and that's when you'll then start to feel better and you make memory cells. So you make helper T memory cells, killer T memory cells, as well as your B cell memory cells. And those B memory cells, just like the T memory cells, they go around and they have those antibodies on the outside always. So anything that you encounter that is exactly the same antibody that you've already had, you can start off straight from there because your body already recognizes it and go straight into attacking it. So that's called a secondary immune response, and it's much quicker because your body has already encountered that foreign thing so that it can get rid of it because it knows what it's dealing with.